Hey guys, it's Abby from Autumn of Pellinor, and today I'm going to be going through the books that I've read in January. So the first month of 2021 started out pretty strong. I read quite a lot of pages in the first 3 days, 2 days, and not so much as the month has gone on. But let's break it down. So the first 2 books, I'm counting it as one, that I read was Most Beloved Sister and Mirabelle by Astrid Lindgren. This is the author who did Pippi Longstockings, and it's just one of the tiny Lovelace books that I have. I have 3 others. I got them in a set at Christmas from my wonderful friend Annie. She's Swedish, she sold these Swedish classics, she sent them to me. She's very lovely. I gave this, I believe, 3 or 4 stars. I should really pull that up. You know, do my job. Maybe 3. So I gave this 3 stars. It's a lovely little sweet book, a little bit odd, but also still enjoyable. This was 19 pages long. So big, I know, so big. And then the next book I read is the Rebel Girls, the Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls series, and there's 5 chapter books within. So the first one is Ada Lovelace Cracks the Code by Quincredible. Yes, I'm checking my computer for these. Then we have Madam C.J. Walker Builds a Business by Deneen Milner. Junko Tabei Masters the Mountains by Nancy Olin. Dr. Wangari Maathai Plants a Forest by Quincredible. And Alicia Alonso Takes the Stage by Nancy Olin once again. So this set of 5 books I got from NetGalley in exchange for an unbiased review and all that. And I've heard so much about these like Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls kind of books that I thought these would be really interesting. So I ended up giving the Ada Lovelace book 3 stars, Madam C.J. Walker 3 stars. Oh, I just checked, I gave them all 3 stars. So yeah, I gave all of these 5 books 3 stars. Some of them were higher on the 3-star scale, some of them were more of like a middle ground. They are all, I always find this difficult to describe. So they're non-fiction books, but they're written in a manner that is very storytelling-like and takes you through their life, and takes you through their lifespan and tells you about the achievements that they've had. And so I read a lot of books like this when I was younger that are accurate but written in a fictionalised style, and I always really enjoyed them as a kid, and these were really fun now. I learnt some stuff that I didn't know. 2 of them are centred on the Americas, one just on North America and one on North and South America, and the others are spread around the world. So I didn't know of the 2 that were set in the Americas, and I knew a little bit about the ones set elsewhere. They were really interesting little books. I think they would be a great addition to any kids shelf or adult if you do love reading a good bit of middle grade for your non-fiction. I just think that they're really lovely and do a great job, but in terms of actually kind of like drawing me in, 3 stars is the maximum I'm going to give them. And in total these all 5 books combined came to 640 pages. And then on to Quincredible, which is by Rodney Barnes. I ended up giving this 4 stars. This is great. It's another NetGalley book. It's a comic book written about a superhero story, and it's a young boy who, everyone else who got powers from this meteor strike has got really cool powers, and he's just invincible, but he's also like a nerd, and like he gets bullied a lot at school, and so he doesn't really talk out about it because he just thinks it's just going to make the bullies beat him up more. And it's kind of him going through like realising the power that he does hold as a person, as well as the power that he holds. The art style is gorgeous. That cover, so pretty. That's why I picked it up, and I really enjoyed that. And that comes in at 144 pages. And then the book that I read on the 3rd of January is The Pale Dreamer by Samantha Shannon, which I think I gave that 5 stars. So this is a novella set before the Bone Season series starts, before book 1, and I wanted to read it for 2 reasons. 1, I'm doing the Buzzword readathon year-long thing, and the prompt for January is dream, so Pale Dreamer. And 2, because The Mask's Falling's coming out. I read The Song Rising last month, and I just wanted to keep myself within the world, and this was absolutely beautiful. I do recommend reading it after you've at least read the Bone Season, because it will provide some more depth, whereas without that, just because I didn't read it as a standalone, I don't know whether you would connect with the characters as well, but you do when you have read the series, and it was really enjoyable little novella, and I'm very glad I read it. It was a nice quick read, and that was another 90 pages. All of those books, all of this page count so far, I read on the first 3 days of January. So January the 1st I read a little tiny book, and then 3 of the 5 Rebel Girl books, and then on the 2nd of January I read 2 of the 5 Rebel Girl books and Quincredible, and then I read The Pale Dreamer on the 3rd. And from there on out it gets slightly more normal. Okay, so then the next book that I actually finished is A Wish After Midnight by Zetta Elliott. I was reading this for the small press book club that I co-host along with Caitlin from My Cheshire Rabbit. This is a fantasy, historical, contemporary combined. So it's mainly fantasy, clearly, because like for me that overtakes everything. But basically we start out following a young girl in modern day Brooklyn. It was written in 2009. Yes, well done Abby. So it was written in 2009, so like modern day, like post-millennium Brooklyn. And so we're following this girl who's experiencing racial prejudice and also sexism just in her day-to-day life, and then magic happens and she ends up in Brooklyn in the 1800s, just before the Civil War. Now I have a feeling that some of this will be more like register in their brain for Americans, just because you guys know the dates that are being talked about, and I do not. I don't know my American history. I've never cared to learn it, no offence, just there's enough elsewhere that interests me already. So that will hit some more notes for you guys, probably from your history lessons in school. But the actual key part of this is our protagonist is a black girl who is sent back in time to a time where slavery is still a thing. She wakes up in a body that's all beaten and bruised from being whipped as a slave, and it's kind of navigating this new life and realising that the freedoms that they had before, although they weren't enough, is still a step towards improvement, but also showing how far we haven't come. It's a really nuanced book. It's beautifully written. I 100% recommend it. It's absolutely gorgeous. I'm so glad we read it. And so that was 290 pages. And the reason I have the photo here is because I read it on my... oh, it's there. I'm so lazy. It's because I read it on my Kindle. But I would like to get myself a physical copy at some point. Then I set myself the goal of reading this little section of Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela, and I did. I read my little section, which was 54 pages. I had read about 100 pages of this, yeah, about 100 pages of this, just over, before the new year, and I was starting to kind of just realise how much it was going to be. So I've done the same as what I've done with some of my other bigger books, which is just tabbed up each chapter, which really helps me with big books, because then when you put them down you then get to see all your progress. And yeah, so I was like, right, I'm just going to aim to finish off this section because it's all split into parts. Part 4, The Struggle is My Life, is the one I'm up to now. So I just read the rest of part 3. This is Nelson Mandela's autobiography. We start from his time growing up in South Africa, and I'm sure we're going to go, I mean mainly staying within South Africa, but I'm sure we'll also go around the world after he is out of his imprisonment. But yes, it's very interesting. It was gifted to me by Carrie. I'm very grateful. And then it comes to the ones that I haven't finished yet, not even like what I was wanting to read. So, kind of. I kind of had 4 of them. So, ironically, the one that I've done more for is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. So I'm buddy reading this with Olivia Savannah from Olivia's Catastrophe, and we set out at the beginning of the year to read 1 chapter a day. We're currently on chapter 6 of book 2, and book 1 had 28 chapters. So we've read more than 1 a day. We ended up doing, on Sundays we read 2 chapters a day on each Sunday, and then now we're progressing into, I work shift work, so every Saturday, which sometimes is a Saturday, like today is Saturday, and sometimes is going to be like a Tuesday, we'll then read 2, and I just let her know when my Saturdays are, when my other days are office. So that's what we're going to be doing then as well. I haven't yet read my 2 chapters for today, and then I also, of course, given that it's Saturday, have 2 more chapters to read tomorrow, which would take me up to, I think, 118 pages through. So yes, I've read 118 pages of War and Peace. We finished book 1, which was focused on the peace side of things. We learned a lot about the characters when they're in Moscow, and some of them in the countryside as well, and just kind of getting to know the backgrounds of these people. And in book 2, obviously I'm not very far into it, only chapter 6, but it is more focused on the war side, but there are some links to back home, and so it's really interesting to be able to see those links where they're like, oh yeah, like remember my missus back home, and like you know her, you know their relationship, you've seen them. So it's going to be interesting to kind of delve more into the war side of things, because book 2 and I think book 3 are both more war based. Let me check that I'm not lying. I'm lying. Book 3 goes back to peace. Yes, we'll go back to Pierre. So me and Olivia, we like Rostov at the minute in the few war chapters that we've read, and we are loving Pierre in the peace chapters, and Anna M, and a few of the others. But yeah, Pierre, we're always like, yes, give me Pierre's point of view, we want anything with Pierre in it. So that's just so much fun, just every day getting to sit there and message Olivia and kind of like talk about the events that are happening. Going slow in it does mean that I, 1, comprehend it more than I did the last time I read it, where I only got this far through. So I'm already, can you see it? Yes. I'm not using a viewfinder, I'm using the mirror that's situated behind the camera. But yeah, so I'm 50 pages further through than the last time I tried to read it, and I understand it so much more, and I'm enjoying it so much more. Like, there was a decently large plot point that happened just before this. I had no memory of it at all. Nothing. And yet reading it with Olivia and going through every chapter and mentioning the bits that we liked and the bits that we didn't and what we thought could happen has just really got me involved in this book, and I'm honestly like genuinely looking forward to reading through this entire thing. It's so much fun. So yes, 118 pages of War and Peace has been gone through, and then we come to the last book, which you can tell I haven't finished. So if it wasn't clear enough yet, I'm filming this on the 30th of January, which is a Saturday, so I have the rest of today and I have tomorrow to read, like, I don't know, 260 pages? No, 280 pages, roughly, of this book. That's gonna piss me off. I don't know if I'll manage it. So at the minute I am 279 pages through, and I'm enjoying it. It's interesting. I don't know if I will be continuing in the series at the moment. At the moment this is a solid 3-star with the recognition that younger me would have given it 4 or 5. But we shall see. Of course there is a good chunk of book left. I do own the second book. I'm looking at it right now. Part of me had intended to read the whole thing, so I'm like the whole series. So I'm hoping that I enjoy it more as the book goes on. But I'm just, yeah, I don't know. I am enjoying it. I'm curious. This is a book where all of the people 15 or over just disappear, like go, and so I am interested in knowing how these kids kind of continue to survive. I'm interested in knowing how the hierarchy goes. There's some interactions between some main characters that I'm interested in, and also our main characters are all on the older side, so for some reason Michael Grant has put them in coming up to 15, so I'm really interested to see how that will happen, like what will happen to them when they turn 15. Do we then get to learn about the world outside of this bubble, or has the world ended outside of this, like what's happened? So I am interested in that. I don't know if I'll get it in this, but I do own the other book, so I should hopefully at least get it in that one, because he's apparently only a few months away, our main character, Sam, from turning 15. So that better not span the entire series. Anyone who's read the series is currently laughing at me. Anyway, so So yeah, at the moment I've read 279 pages of this, which takes, I already did the maths, takes my maths up to 1,634 pages so far this month, which is not a lot. I thought, like, for comparison, I would go and check out my reading in 2020, and January of 2020 I read 1,840 pages. But I was unemployed. So like, I got my job halfway through August, so my like actual reality pages now are September, October, November, December, and they were from 1,800 at the max to 800 at the minimum. So I'm like within that bracket, but it's just kind of interesting to see. Like, my average over the entire year last year was to read 2,108 pages each month. And clearly I'm nowhere near that, and January is normally like a good Kickstarter month, so that's interesting, and it's going to be interesting to see how I progress through the months of the year. It's also interesting that if I do finish Gone, these are the only 2 physical books I got off of my TBR, which is not the intent. As you guys know, the intent is to get books off of my TBR, but I made the mistake of going on NetGalley, so I needed to read those. And then also Small Press Book Club. I love doing it, but it then brings in an ebook, which in this instance was an ebook, and then also reading The Pale Dreamer. And I also want to read The Dawn Chorus as well, so it's going to be another ebook, because they don't come in physical copies at all, which is why I don't own them yet. So yeah, it's been an interesting one. My TBR for next month is ridiculous. It's stupid. And yeah, so at the minute, I'm not going to zoom in yet because this is what my spreadsheet looks like. For now, it won't be accurate yet, so I'm going to just film this once January's over and once it's actually all filled in, and see how I've done there. But I am happy with my little War and Peace section. But I've read my 31 chapters of War and Peace, which was one of the goals, so yeah, it's been a weird one, but I'm not mad. Essentially, and we'll see how February goes. Wish me luck. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you managed to read this month. It's been a really weird one with a lot of news, but also nothing changing, but also everything changing. I started working from home this month. So yeah, let me know what you read this month and if you've read any of these. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!